All right, good to be with everybody. If I haven't met you, I'm Chip Freed, the lead teaching pastor here at Garfield Memorial Church. I want to greet all of you who are with us online, whether you're with us live right now or you're checking in during the week, that's great. We pray that the same spirit that's at work in us here will be at work in you as you lean into this worship experience together. We will have communion at the end of our service today, so if you're online and you want to grab something to represent the communion elements for you, we invite you to do that. Today we're beginning a new series, and I don't want anybody to laugh, okay? It's entitled The Ruthless Eimination of Hurry. It's based on a book by John Mark Comer. My nephew, Will, who is the oldest nephew, he's a PhD, MD, runs a cancer lab in Boston. In Christmas of 2019, he said, Uncle Chip, I'm worried about you. You need to read this book. And I said, okay. Will and I have always been book freaks together and share things. And I made it a plan. This is Christmas of 2019, mind you. I said, I'm going to put that on my reading list for next year. And the following year, nothing happened. Only 2 months in, the world shut down. And that book ended up on a shelf as I began to work about 16-hour days figuring out how do you navigate a large church through these waters. I didn't pick it back up until this past Christmas. I was digging around some things. I said, oh my gosh, Will gave me that book 5 years ago. I need to read it. And I read it and I started to cry. And I realized, first I was mad at two things. One, I was mad this joker is so daggone young and he's got this all figured out. And secondly, I was mad he's so doggone young and he's way smarter than me. Once I got past those two things, I began to really take in this process of the ruthless elimination of hurry. Now, in a way that God only has a great sense of humor. Pastor Terry was at our heritage service this morning. I think she's back there somewhere. And she had left something on my desk this week. Some of you know she technically retired last week. I just won't let her leave. But she left on my desk something from Ministry by Strengths. If you don't know, we use Strength Finder 2.0. It's a personality assessment. And it really focuses on all of us have been designed differently. We have strengths in various orders. But Gallup's contention, Pastor Terry and I were trained in 2010, before we brought that to this church, that you can't not operate in your signature strengths. It's how you're wired, especially under stress. It's your go-to mechanisms. It's where you run to. And we've found that to be very, very true. 1,100 folks here have gone through Ministry by Strengths. If you haven't done it yet, we hope you will. But all what we learned in Ministry by Strengths is your strengths unmanaged, okay, turn into weaknesses. Like they're all tools, right? They're tools in a toolbox, a saw, a hammer, whatever. And like a chainsaw is a good tool unless you mismanage it, and then you have a horror movie, right? So the mismanagement, I don't know why. I think Terry was worried with her leaving, I was going to lose my guardrail for my achiever strength. So she reminded me of the 6 deadly sins, they're not called that, of achiever strength unmanaged. Would you like to hear them? I don't care if you do or don't. I'm going to read them anyways. Okay. 1, example of achiever strength being mismanaged. This is my number 1 strength, or my second strength after ideation. Achiever people can have a relentless pursuit without reflection. Individuals with strong achiever talents might constantly pursue new goals without taking the time to acknowledge and appreciate what they've already accomplished. This can lead to a lack of satisfaction despite numerous successes. Number 2, achiever strength people have a high risk of burnout. The relentless drive to be productive can make achievers susceptible to burnout if they don't prioritize self-care and breaks. I already hate this series. This can jeopardize their well-being in the long term. Number 3, they have difficulty delegating. Some individuals with high achiever strength may struggle to delegate tasks because they prefer to handle everything themselves to ensure it's done to their high standards. Number 4, they are susceptible to comparison and perfectionism. Achievers can be prone to perfectionism, setting unrealistically high standards and comparing themselves unfavorably to others. Number 5 on this list from hell. Achiever strength people can neglect relationships. The intense focus on achieving can sometimes lead achievers to ignore their teams, their peers, and potentially strain relationships if not managed well. And the last one, achievers lack downtime. Achievers dislike being idle and may view meetings or other less productive activities as a waste of time, which can create frustration for them and others. I read that this week when Pastor Terry left on my desk, and I just want to say two things. I know my wife is somewhere here in the building. Honey, I'm sorry. That's one. I just want to say, I'm sorry. I think my daughter's here. I'm sorry. If any of my kids are online, I'm sorry. That's number one. Number two, you heard that list? And you want me to be the person to preach on the ruthless elimination of hurry. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Sometimes I get up here and there's a subject and I kind of am worried I might be a hypocrite. There's other times I don't worry about it. I just know. I mean, hurry's not just something I do, it's in my DNA. And even though sociologists will say hurry is ruining our culture in many, many ways, I have to tell you from whence I came. Two quick stories. One, when I was in the corporate arena and I was a little CEO around my own business, in my CEO office, I had a big sign in my office, big enough that all the employees could see, that said, "Good things come to those who wait, but only those things left behind by those who hustle." Just do a little confession up here today, okay? Lori, take me to the prayer wall after and dump a gallon of oil on me. I don't know. But the other thing was I went to Elyria, Ohio. It was my first appointment. It was the oldest historical black church in Lorain County. They were 2 years away from closing. And Terry and I said, hey, we'd like to go and see if we can turn things around and see what God will do. And 5 years later, it was a vital outpost, 400 in worship. We had stuff for underserved youth and kids. And I hit the ground there at a frenetic pace. I said at Heritage today, if any of you are here who were here 21 years ago when I got here, shut up. Like, don't talk to anybody about it. So back then, I did a frenetic pace. And I realized that I was really getting on the nerves of all the pastors in that community. Now, one, I thought, my wife has always said that Chip has the spiritual gift of irritation. So I thought maybe that was it, right? Until I started, talking with them and going, 90 mile an hour. And there was a Jamaican pastor, a Baptist preacher. He was much older than me. And he was across the street. And he just became a real safe harbor for me. And I was with him one time. And I said, I don't know why you guys are getting mad. And we're doing stuff. And we have no time to wait. And we're reaching these kids and youth. And they're in gangs and stuff. And we're pulling them out. And you guys just mad at me for everything I'm doing. I know it's different. I know I'm not wearing suits and white gloves at communion and all that. But, we got to do new things. And he said, look, Buster Brown. Buster White. William White. I can do this all day. Okay. But he said, listen. He said, it's not what you do that irritates us. It's the pace at which you do it. Wow. And y'all want me to preach about the ruthless elimination of hurry. So I had to do some homework this week. I did my homework. I'm like, gosh, I got to study hurry. It's a curse in my life. I believe it is something that very, very much derails us from faith. Hurry keeps us from focusing on God. Have you ever noticed that? Anytime people in the Bible hurried into battle or hurried into play and forgot to pray, it didn't go well. That's right. Do you know Jesus rarely hurried? He had time for people. He went to meet a woman at the well and she was late. He just hung out. He heard that Lazarus was dying and he just goofed off for 4 days. Missed the funeral, and then went and ministered to broken hearts. Jesus would not be hurried, and we are. But I had to study, and do you know I did a word study? So the title of this message is, Our Problem is We Try to Rest in Our Performance. Hang on to that one. So the hurry is associated with the following words, just linguistically, etc. Hurl, does that conjure up any images for you? Not a good one, right? Hurdle, hurly-burly, which literally means uproar, and hurricane. I went to psychotherapy and I read this is a definition that psychotherapists use about hurry. Hurry is a state of frantic effort one falls into in response to feelings of inadequacy, fear, and guilt. There's a Korean philosopher named Byung-Chul Han. He actually lives in Germany now, and he's written a lot about Western society and our frenetic pace, hurrying all the time. He wrote a book called The Burnout Society that I researched before talking about this message. And the last line of his book struck me. Talking about us, he said, "They are too alive to die and too dead to live." Corrie ten Boom said, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. And Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychotherapists in the history of the world, said it this way. He said, hurry is not of the devil. Hurry is the devil. This kind of disarmed me a bit this week. So I went to some of the spiritual redwoods, John Ortberg and his mentor, Dallas Willard. These are guys who went deep, deep, deep. In fact, John Mark Comer studied with both of them. And here's what these theologians said about hurry. Ortberg said, we are so used to spiritually mediocre days. That really cut me. I hope it cuts you. We have settled for so little and called it church. We have settled for so little and called it prayer. Settled for so little and called it faith. We have so used to spiritually mediocre days. Days lived in irritation and fear and self-preoccupation and frenzy that we throw our lives away in a hurry. Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And it was that line by Dallas that John chose to be the title of his book. There's some scriptures that bother me. Do you have any of those in your life? Just some you wish weren't there? You know, Thomas Jefferson, anything he didn't like, he just cut out. I think all of us have that same thing, right? We pray the Lord's Prayer at Heritage every Sunday. I like to pray, forgive us our trespasses. I hate that part after it, as we forgive those who trespass. I wish we could just cut that out. Just forgive me, right? I always say, I can bury the hatchets with people, but I always keep little maps to know where I buried them, right? So one of the things, I was reading the Psalms this week, and there was a psalm that bugged me. It's always bugged me. It's Psalm 3, where David's saying, all many are my foes. Everybody's rising against me. Many are saying to me, there's no help for you in God, but you, O Lord, is a shield. I hate this line. I lie down and sleep. I wake again, for the Lord sustains me. I'm not afraid of tens of thousands of people. That's an acid test of how your soul's doing. Can you, in the midst of everything that's arrayed against you on Monday, can you go home and sleep tonight? Really sleep. Psychotherapists say it's not the length of our sleep that matters, it's the quality of it. Ever heard of REM sleep? Rapid eye movement sleep. Jesus said there's a rapid eye movement sleep of the soul that all of us need. And that's why Hebrews said there remains then a rest for the people of God. This is beyond relaxation techniques and breathing exercises. This is about Sabbath rest, deep, deep Sabbath rest. Pastor Steve's going to talk about Sabbath on August 3rd. But this story is a beginning story about Jesus in conflict with the religious leaders about the Sabbath. See, the Sabbath was a law given by God. I want you to honor one day a week, set it aside, focus on God, focus on me, and keep it holy. And in fact, it's one of the 10 Commandments that's the longest words about it, a lot longer than you shall not murder, you shall not steal. So it was really important to God. The problem is, when Jesus comes and heals this man, the religious leaders go nuts because he's violating Sabbath rules. Now, I'm going to make the contention, he didn't violate Sabbath law, but he violated Sabbath rules. Because what had happened is these religious leaders had taken God's laws and they had added countless rules and regulations to these laws and made it so oppressive to people. That's why I say, Jesus can bring us a rest from religion. He can bring us a rest. Religion is not helpful in this regard. If you try to rest in your performances, religion will be glad to let you do that. Because religion says as you do this and this and this and this, you said this prayer and that prayer, you do these 8 things of giving, you do these 4 particular styles of prayer, and then God will bless you, and then God will take you to heaven and listen to your prayers. That is religion. That is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. In fact, at the end of Buddha's life, the Buddha it was said, he lay up in his deathbed, and you know what he said to those around him? Keep on striving. Oh, that doesn't help me. That doesn't ruthlessly eliminate her. Yeah, okay, more work to do, right? Let me keep working and working and working, and then I'll have something to show for at the end of their life. Jesus didn't say keep on striving. Jesus said, it is finished. I've done the striving. Rest in me. And that's really what he calls us to rest from religion. Paul talked about this. In my inner being, I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war, making me a prisoner. Who's going to rescue me? Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ, my Lord. See, these religious leaders are upset that this whole system is not following all their rules and regulations of their religion. Do you know they're mad at the man? Did you hear the story? Because he's carrying his mat. That was illegal to do on the Sabbath. You could not carry something because that was considered work. But had the man tied it around his waist, he could do that because it would be considered something he was wearing. Do you hear how helpful all this is? They used to use vinegar and put on their teeth for like toothaches and things like that. But on the Sabbath, you couldn't do any medical work. That's considered breaking the rules, okay? So you couldn't put vinegar on your teeth. What you could do is load up your food with vinegar. And as you ate your food, if so happens to help your aching teeth, that's not a violation of Sabbath law. You couldn't travel more than 1,000 yards from your house on the Sabbath. But if on Friday you took food to various locations less than 1,000 yards from your house, and then less than 1,000 yards from that house, and less than 1,000 yards from that house, you could travel house to house to house anywhere within that region, because technically, as long as you stopped in and ate some of the food, you had established a residence. Do you hear how ridiculous this is? This was not about honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. This is about, here, let me give you a bunch of rules and regulations. So if you know you are checking all the rules and regulations, then you can look out the world and say, I'm doing okay because I'm following all the rules and I'm not like these people laying by the pool over there. And I've learned that sin is not about breaking rules finally. Sin is about breaking God's heart. And these religious leaders were breaking Jesus' heart because he said, you're so busy working on your religious performance that you can't even see people laying around a pool who are hurting, and you can't do anything about it because you're sure I'm okay. I'm doctrinally pure. Ugh. It's one of the reasons, and I know you're with me, oh, those legalists drive me crazy. Yeah, it's one of the reasons religious people can be so uptight. Have you ever noticed that people, they're trying to work out with their religion and follow all the rules and everything? Pretty soon they're spiritually out of breath. There's bags on the eyes of their soul. It's why people in churches fight so daggone much. It's why they're some of the most irritable people alive. They can't take criticism. They're so sensitive all the time, right? And you say, okay, yeah, the church is bad. Well, what do? Go out in the world and find well-adjusted folks? No, you find people who are running from one self-help idea to another self-help idea because they're trying to rest. And they come to Jesus, and I love this, and they say, look, you're working on the Sabbath. See, there was only one person who was allowed to work on the Sabbath. You know who that was? Thank you. I said that at Heritage, and everybody I said that was a softball. I mean, I don't know the answer. God, yes. Thank you. God was the only one that could work on the Sabbath. And they go to Jesus and they said, hey, you're working on the Sabbath. Now, what Jesus could have said, he could have gotten to a religious debate. Joe preached about that last week if you were here. Great debates, right? And he could have gotten to a debate and said, no, I'm honoring the law of God. I'm just not listening to all these little rules and regulations you put on. He could have done that, but I love my Lord and Savior who doesn't give them those little things, but gives them what they need. They said, hey, only God can work on the Sabbath, and you're working on the Sabbath. And Jesus goes, exactly. What's he saying? Yeah. My Father has work to do, and I have work to do. I am God. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. And that, if you read, and we didn't read verse 18 today, it said that's when the religious leaders knew that he had to die because he was considering himself as equality with God. Jesus said, here's the solution for your rest. You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, but I'm working on the Sabbath. And it's my work that I'm going to do that's the key to your ultimate rest. The rest you need up to the work beneath the work, of trying to figure out if you measure up and using religion to do it, to find out if you're accepted and using those things to do it. And so I love, I got 8 minutes left, so I'll take 2 minutes on 4 points, okay? I love what Paul says also when he says, therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Religion cannot make you whole. That's false rest. What religion points to, our Lord and Savior can. So what do we learn about what does Jesus do? So he brings cosmic rest to this hurting guy. 4 things. Here's one. First, Jesus doesn't wait for us to come to him. He comes to us. Jesus saw the man lying there and knew. Jesus sees you and knows what's burdening you. He sees you and knows why you're so judgmental because you're so insecure. He sees you and knows what you're frightened about. He sees how hard you're working just to be good and be right, and he knows. You know, we always talk about give your life to Jesus. I got to be honest with you. Did I give my life to Jesus? Yeah, I guess so. But the truth is, I really didn't give my life to Jesus. Jesus invaded my life. Jesus came into my room, in the college room, and just shook the ceiling and wouldn't let me sleep. And I shake my hand and say, don't you know I don't want to talk to you? And he's like, I don't care. Like, you know, we always talk about that. I talk about Russell Moore. I was at a conference, and he says, you know, everybody says, give your life to, Jesus has come into my life. He said, Jesus doesn't want to come into your life. Your life is a mess. He wants you to come into his life, and that's why he initiates the contact. And when you think you can't get to him, let me tell you, he can always get to you. That's right. Because he sees and he knows. The first thing is he comes. Do you realize this guy doesn't even ask for anything? He's just scheming. There was a legend that if the water got troubled, it meant an angel was passing over, and you try to get in the water, and he's like, Jesus, I just, can you be my professional associate to get me into the water? He said, you know what? I am the water. And you're leaning on false things and false rests and false idols. And we got to get you out of that. So what does he do? He rouses us from our false rests. He makes us see our own idolatry. Jesus said to the man, do you want to be made well? Now, this is a guy that's been laying there for 38 years. This is not good pastoral care. This is not how I was trained to go into a hospital room and say, do you want to be healed? I mean, it's either Jesus is naive, like, of course you know he wants to be made well. He's been there 38 years. Or he's just being cruel. But Jesus is neither of those things. He's neither naive. He's neither cruel. He knew where the man was. And he's doing an intervention. Do you want to change the way you've been going out of things? Are you able to admit that what you've been doing is not working? That's step 3. He wants us to see that our way is not working. I love what this guy does. I mean, what does Jesus get out of this encounter? This is Jesus. This is the God of the universe coming over, seeing the man, coming to him. The man never cries out to him. He doesn't ask Jesus for anything. Jesus initiates all the contact. He rouses him to see his condition. And all he wants to know is, do you understand the way you're doing it isn't working? Because this guy doesn't give Jesus anything. He doesn't even know who Jesus is. Did you read it? The Pharisees went to the leaders and said, who healed you? He said, I don't know. It's some guy. I mean, he doesn't get, this guy doesn't say, I believe in the Father, Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. You know, he doesn't say, oh, thou Holy One of Israel. He says, look, I keep trying to get down to the water. Nothing's working. And I love this. I am making my way. I've been doing this thing my way because this is what I thought would give me rest. This is what I thought would heal me. And Jesus, all he needs is for us to say, you know what? My way's not working. And I'm clueless how to get there. And, you know, he doesn't give Jesus some great confession of faith. He just admits that he's helpless. And guess what? That's all Jesus ever needs. That's all he ever needs. And he comes into that man's life and he says to him, you know, take up your mat and walk. Faith doesn't start with a lot of knowledge, friends. I think we're always thinking, I've got to know all these things before I can take a step of faith. I love what Dr. King said years ago. Faith is taking the first step even when you can't see the staircase. Faith, this guy doesn't have great knowledge. He doesn't know who Jesus is, but he knows his way is broken, and Jesus says, that's fine. I'm going to get involved in your life. And if I ended it there and called you to communion, you'd probably be comfortable. But you know what? Jesus came back. How many of you know Jesus always comes back? He's persistent, man. He's a physician that's never lost a patient. I'm going to tell you, early on in my faith, when God started doing some great things for me, I was like, oh, yeah, dap him up. Good job, Jesus. Thanks. I'll see you later, right? How many of you know he comes back? That's right. He circles back around. He says, there's more that you need to know. That's right. See, this guy thought he was just physically sick, but Jesus comes back, finds him in the temple. So the guy got, well, what'd he do? I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go join a class. I'm going to go try to perform. And Jesus said, you've been made well. Don't sin anymore. What he's saying to him is, you thought you were just physically sick, but you're soul sick too. And you need to come away to your own sinfulness, what we call around here a common brokenness. So Jesus is saying to him, stop being so self-centered and living only for yourself and start living for me. And when we can admit that we've been struggling, this is really what's been keeping us up at night. We can not try to perform and to be accepted, but we can give receive the acceptance that Jesus already has for us as we acknowledge our own helplessness in saving ourselves. The religious leaders couldn't do that. They needed to make sure they were saving themselves so they could make sure they were better than everyone else. But Jesus said, I'm first and you get to be tied for second with everybody else on the planet. How about that? That's right. That receives me and admits they're helpless. All right, let me close with this story just because it's too good. I was reading an article in The Economist. It's called The Curse of the Michelin Star. Like some of you know, I'm a wannabe chef. I love to cook. I put on my red jacket. Some of you know, me and Pastor Terry have our duels. That part she can retire from. She can just give up. She's probably going to come back and wipe the floor with me again. But I like to cook and all that. And some of you know a Michelin star, right? That's the greatest attainment that a chef or a restaurant could ever achieve. It's what Gordon Ramsay yaps about all the time, right? On his 32 shows, 33, 34, 35, anyhow. But they did this study in The Economist called The Curse of the Michelin Star, and what they said, they found out that 40% of restaurants that receive a Michelin star close within 10 years. Isn't that crazy? And here's what the article said. A Michelin star can bring other issues. It boosts popularity. It finds that Google searches rise over a third for newly starred restaurants. But that fame comes with a price. First, the restaurant's customers change. Being in the limelight raises diners' expectations and brings in tourists from farther away. Meeting guests' greater demands piles on new costs. Second, the award puts a star-shaped target on the restaurant's back. Businesses they deal with, such as ingredient suppliers and landlords, use this opportunity to raise all of their costs. Chefs want their salaries to reflect the accolade, and they're more likely to be poached by competitors. I guess this writer said there is no pot of gold on the other side of the Michelin star rainbow. And subsequent to that, I read about this French chef, Sébastien Bros. He's one of France's most celebrated chefs. He got his first Michelin star in 1999 at the age of 26. He's only 54. But for the last 8 years, he's achieved all 3 Michelin stars, which is the highest you can have. Michelin writers say his cooking is spellbinding. For the last 8 years, he's been trying to give them all back. In fact, he told them, take me off the list. I want to give them back. And they'll take him back, and then he'll do something else, and they'll give him another one, and he'll give that one back. He's been doing this for 8 years. And I had to read what's going on, and he said, watch this, the pressure to perform was too much. Don't rest in your performance. That's what Paul found out. I tried to perform the law perfectly, and it ground me into dust. But thanks be to God, through the grace of Jesus Christ, he has saved me. The pressure to perform, Sebastian said, was too much. He announced, today I want to give a new meaning to my life and redefine what's essential. He said, maybe I'll be less famous, but I accept that. I would like to continue to cook excellent local produce without wondering whether my creations meet the standards of the Michelin inspectors. You know what he was saying? I want to be free. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. Because we're not resting in our performance. We're resting in Jesus' performance, who on the cross said, it is finished. I've done the work for you to feel worthy and be accepted. So quit trying to perform and do the work to feel that you're accepted and accept that you already are. And then hear him say, come unto me when you're tired and your soul has bags under its eyes and you're spiritually exhausted and you're burdened because you're trying to perform your way into God's blessing, when God has already given you his blessing. Jesus said, come unto me at those times and I will give you rest. Pastor Joe's going to come and lead us to the table. If those of you who are preparing for the table, would you come and start to prepare as Joe begins to share? And just know, when you come to this table, there's bread, there's a cup, there's chairs. We come into God's table not to, be impressive. We come into God's table to rest. So Joe, lead us to this Sabbath table.